Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my best and worst of 2023, top 3 best, top 3 worst, if that's how you want to say it. And I definitely feel like this was a very meh year for me with reading. I didn't have any I had hardly any rants, which is very unusual. And normally the books that I was ranting about was for a specific reason. It wasn't like this is the worst book in the world. I didn't have any of those. There was definitely no, really angry rants about books that I'll never touch that again. That was the worst thing I've ever read. No, not really. This was a bunch of meh and disappointing to me books. So there were books that definitely didn't work for me very specifically, and I didn't like them even if they're classics. I really just didn't like the characters. And I will say that this year is continuing the trend of the unlikable character. Read my book, love my book, but I will not make you care about these characters. These characters are going to be trash and you will like it. And that does not ever work for me. I have to care about these characters to actually want to read. So I will get into my top, let's go out on a high note. So I'll do it the top 3 worst first. Okay, so let's start with the one that's probably going to be most irritating to people and most surprising that it made it on the worst list. And that's going to be The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. But if you saw my review, you know that this did not work for me, that I found the characters to be incredibly distasteful and struggled through this one. This is a short book. It felt very long. It has a very meandering plot. The writing is fine. The writing is very good, I would say. But it couldn't save the plot of the story for me. I didn't care. And for all of these very famous characters, Daisy Buchanan, Jay Gatsby, these are well-known characters in literature, and I didn't like them. Hate is a strong word. I did not like them. And to me, how I can tell that a book didn't work, as if you were to say to me, if all of these characters died, how would you feel? Nothing. I would have felt nothing. I think this is an interesting book for the time period if you're really interested in the 1920s, the kind of excess and the lavish parties and the mindset that there's still that very much that class distinction, and how people really cared about that. So yeah, if you're interested in that, read it, but not for me, not at all. Next on my list for the worst category is going to be The Bear and the Nightingale. And this one started out as a 3-star for me. Like I said, I didn't have any hated books. I don't think I had I didn't have any 1-star books. That's just not how my year did not go that way, which was nice. But the more I thought about it and the missed potential of this book, I was so disappointed in it. I thought this was going to be a top read for me. The characterization is so lacking in this book. I could not even tell you what was the main character's motive, what she was all about, who she really was. There's also a very long side quest to retrieve a stepmother that could have been boiled down to one conversation. This could have been a journey with the father going to get the stepmother, to the, he goes to the courts to, have the king kind of grant him another wife, I guess. I don't know how it works. But he goes there to kind of find, a wife, I guess that's of a more noble bloodline. So he goes there, and this could have happened where he went and then came back with her, and the conversation was, here, sons, this is your new stepmother, and they're looking at her she's young, she looks a little messed up, how'd you end up with her? And he tells them about all the things in the court and the problems really quickly, why this all happened and why this political marriage, kind of worked against him. And it could have been so quick, but it takes up a big section of the book where they go to retrieve this woman who's going to be the new stepmother. She is an important character, but her introduction was so long and boring, and the stuff in the court and the things they ate and the things that they wore and, who the sons were, hooking up with in the court. And it's just so boring and so unnecessary. And I think because the next book is going to deal more with the court aspect and them going back to that area, or the main character at least, and being part of it. I think that was what this set up, but this book is basically all set up for the next book, and that didn't work for me. I want to be invested in these characters in the first book. If I need to have a full book of setup, I'm not going to continue. So yeah, the more I think about it, the less I enjoyed this. There's nothing wrong with the writing. That's very good atmosphere, very well written that way. I definitely felt the wintry feels, but no, I did not like the plot and did not like the characters. Okay, the last one and probably my least favorite book of 2023 is going to be The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I read this towards the beginning of the year. Couldn't stand it. I have read her books. This is the second one. So I read The Hunting Party the year before. And this continues the trend of Lucy Foley books that I can guess what's going to happen. After I read The Hunting Party, this is almost the exact same setup where she kind of slowly shows you that everybody in the book has a motive for killing the main, the guy or girl who's going to be murdered. So the victim, because these are these mystery kind of murder intrigue thrillers. And so you know that it's not going to be those people. And sorry if this is spoilers, I'll put it ahead of this, but it's very, very obvious if you read her book, and I don't know if this is for all of them, but for the ones that I've read, the setup is, here's a horrible person and their friends who are probably to some degree, if not equally, like they're all kind of horrible. They may be just as horrible as the main person who's going to die, but some of them are just terrible people, not necessarily worthy of death, but I mean, not that anyone is. We can talk about that, but that's a moral question for another day. But yeah, she's going to set up like, hey, you should hate this person. They're going to die. And then here's all the reasons why this person wants to kill them. And then you have to think. So she just set all that up. So you know it ain't any of those people. She's not going to be one of those people that actually killed the person. So there's a lot of coincidence in this book. This is about a wedding where this kind of like rich wedding where they all go to this remote island. I think it's somewhere like near Ireland. And this is a destination wedding and it's supposed to be a big deal. But the groom is kind of gross. The bride is very like shallow. And then you have all the friends that are equally shallow or terrible, depending on who you're looking at, like the bride's friends versus the groomsmen who are just icky. And nobody really has a lot of redeeming qualities. I feel like the one person was, I think her name was Olivia, but she was the sister to the bride and she was young and she had a very sad story. It just, nobody though, like was very likable. And so Lucy Foley tends to write her characters as, I think she thinks they're very realistic, but if this was my friends group, I would question my life choices. If my friends group were all people that I was like, oh yeah, I am actually like horrified by their behavior. They're terrible. They're unlikable. They're mean. They're constantly, thinking of themselves. They have no empathy for anyone around them. Like, no. But this is how she writes them. And also all of her characters that have had kids seem to be miserable. And like, I don't know why she writes it that way, but maybe she has some insight to people in their 30s who have a lot of regret about having children. I have kids. I have 3. And so that to me is kind of a turnoff, and that this is the second book where she's had a parent character, usually the mom, who's like, oh, I'm tired and worn down. And those are all real feelings and could be written about in a very interesting way. But she just takes it as like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have gotten married so young. And maybe I've missed out. Now I can't party. And maybe I can still hook up with somebody at this wedding. And you're like, okay, whatever. So that's why I don't like that book. And if I wouldn't have guessed who it was, which I did, I may have liked it more, but I didn't like it. I don't like her writing style necessarily. Also, there are intimate scenes in both of her books that I read, The Hunting Party and The Guest List, and they are written to where you wish you could wash your brain off of like what you just read. Like, I wish I could remove that from my brain. It's so icky. And I don't know if that's the point. Like, if she's trying to make you feel like, ew, that's really gross. Because it's like, this is anti-steamy. This is whatever is the opposite of steam. It's gross. So that's my thoughts on that book. I don't think she's a bad writer. I think it's just not my style. Very much not my style. Moving on. This is a book, and I'm just going to throw this in as my honorable mention, that could have been either on the best or the worst list of 2023, and that is Sphere by Michael Crichton. And like, hats off to Michael Crichton for being able to write a book that is so confusing to me that I have no idea how to categorize it. Like, did I love it? Did I hate it? Still don't know. Still think about it. It is crazy. spaceship in an underwater like laboratory. Like they find a spaceship under the ocean, then they have to go down to this underwater lab. Crazy things start happening. Like, is it horror? Is it mystery? Is it thriller? Is it sci-fi? What is this? And then is it a deep psychological thriller? I mean, I guess it can be all those things, but I still think about that book and I'm like, what do I think about that book? It's a mystery to me still. And one that I'm like, maybe in a few years I'll go back and read this and see how I feel, because I just at the end was so baffled. And it's such an interesting but frustrating book. So if you haven't read it, I recommend it just for like, let me know what you think, because I'm just not sure where I am on that book, but hey, had to mention it. Sphere, I still think about it. I still wonder what could have been changed to make that book work better, if anything. All right, so let's talk about the best of 2023. And like I said, I don't even think I had a 5-star checking. Actually, I had 1 5-star review if I'm going to categorize it that way. But most of these were 4 stars, and I'm just going to do my top 3. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Jurassic Park. So another Michael Crichton. Wait, I have it. So Michael Crichton makes it onto the top list with Jurassic Park. I love this book. I thought it was great. I liked the changes that were different from book to movie. The movie adaptation is wonderful, perfect, in my opinion. What they changed made sense, especially the character of John Hammond is, I believe, the character's name. Yes. I know it's Hammond. I think it's John. John Hammond. The changes made to his character from the book to the movie, it makes perfect sense. The movie did it right. But I do appreciate this other version of him as kind of not the like kindly grandpa, but the definitely like greedy, very much like money hungry, kind of distasteful, obviously super rich character that just does what he wants because he can. And, almost feels like he's too brilliant to fail, which is super interesting, but I do prefer the movie version. I think that just works and gives you much more sympathy for the character. But I love the book. I definitely recommend it. It's they did change quite a bit, but I feel like it's definitely worth reading to see the differences. And I think that both work. But I think the movie for me is a little better, but obviously it comes with visuals that were so stunning and so like amazing for that time period that it's just like, oh my gosh, I still remember when I first saw Jurassic Park, but the book is great. Okay. The next book that made it onto my best list is Coraline. I read this around sometime in October for like my spooky read, and I love Coraline. I thought it was great. I have not seen the movie. I don't know if I will, but I love the book. I thought it was perfect for spooky season, like not too spooky, and nothing was going to keep me awake at night, but I'm not a child. So if you have, I wouldn't let my like 6-year-old read this. Not yet. But I definitely had that, kind of dark, sinister feel without going too dark. And I like the journey to this other world, the door to another world, but it's kind of like a sinister Narnia where everything is horrible. And there's this other version of her parents and this very like creepy atmosphere where, they've got like the sewn on button eyes and everything is very creepy. And I liked it. I thought it worked. I thought the writing was great, and I think it had a great atmosphere and feel, especially for October. So if you want to read it then. But it would work anytime. I just think it's a really fun read and quick. So definitely recommend Coraline. Okay, finally, and this is going to be my 5-star read, the only one for 2023, is going to be All Quiet on the Western Front. And this book, it's one that I will reread. Like, I feel like it's so important. I think everybody should read it. It is about World War I, specifically the German soldiers, and one in particular, but it's him and his friends and how they have to deal with this war. And it's so sad. And the trench fighting is so horrific, and what they're dealing with, and the death of their friends, and the horror of war, but through the eyes of these kids that just didn't understand what they were getting into. And he talks about like the teacher that kind of recruited them all and how they feel so cheated. And I just think it's so good because you don't have that perspective as much nowadays. with people who have gone through that kind of like really, really horrific trench warfare and how bad it was. And you don't see that. I know there are movies. It's just not like, I'm not a big war movie person, but this really put me in that that feeling of like, wow, how horrible would this be? And you don't have, you know, your family there. You don't know if you're going to make it. You don't know, like, you're fighting for survival all the time. And the, you know, the beginning, I believe like one of the first parts of the book is them discussing who's going to get these shoes of their friend who's dying. But like, they can't think of it in any other way. Like, they can't stop and grieve. They can't think about this life. They just have to think like, man, he had really nice shoes. I, you know, that would help me to survive. Like, maybe I'll, you know, if I get these shoes, you know, I'll have like a better chance and not getting sick as much. And like, these can replace my old shoes that are worn out. Like, who knows when I'd get nice shoes again. So sad. But like, this is how you had to think back then, you know, and in that mind, like, you can't deal with stuff. You can't grieve, and the horrors of war and not being able to deal with any of it, and just being, the fighting has to go on. You know, you don't get a break. You know, whether you're there holding the back, like holding your dead friend, you know, as you're, you know, trying to get through a battlefield, like, you don't get to stop and think about that. You could be next. So I like this book a lot. I think it's so important. The writing is really good. And I will read it again, because I think for a war story, it's so like brings it home and is personal, but also gives you an idea of the broader, you know, like concepts of war, and how, you know, at one point he's killing an enemy soldier and he is so upset. He's in the trench with him and they're both just there and the guy's dying and he doesn't know what to do. They're still enemies, but he wants to save him and he doesn't know, like, these horrible feelings and how you would feel having to look someone in the eye who's already dying. Do you kill them? Do you tell them it's okay? What do you do? You're just pawns. You're just in this war because someone else put you there. You don't have any choice. And it's really, really, really a great book. I highly recommend if you haven't read it. So, All Quiet on the Western Front, my absolute favorite of 2023. Will read again. Great book. Okay, so that's going to wrap up my best and worst of 2023. I apologize for the setup. I'm getting new filming equipment, but alas, not quite yet. So hopefully 2024 will be a really good reading year and good filming year. I am writing my list now, although you know me, I'm a mood reader. I never stick to a TBR. But I do have some books that are on my list for next year, and I will definitely be making a like books I'm hoping to get to in 2024, and we'll see where I land with that. I think I mentioned it, but I did read 40 books this year. That was my total. This is a much shorter than normal because I had my son in June, and yeah, that whole process took up a lot of time. So I definitely took a long break from reading, but I'm back to normal, you know, reading schedule. So if you have a favorite book from 2023 or a book that you hated in 2023, tell me in the comments, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Happy New Year.